All right, good morning. Ms. Blakewell, who's online right now? Ms. Boyd?
Good morning. We have Mayor Brunson, Mayor Gomez, and I believe Councilmember Horland online. I don't see her right now, but I saw her a few minutes ago, so I'm not positive. Mayor Brunson will be participating solely online, and Mayor Gomez and Councilmember Horland are on their way here.
Excellent.
And then Member Fernandez and Vice Chair Castillo have asked for excused absences.
Okay, sounds great. So we do have folks here to get started. Good morning, everyone. What a special day.
Good morning, Chair.
Bring your kids to work day. This is awesome. We've got the MPO kids over there. Want to say hi to everybody? Hi, guys. And then we've got some special guests up here on the dais today. Dr. Zima, why don't you introduce your guest today?
Chair, thank you so much. I get to do a few things now and then as an elected leader here, but I don't get to do anything that I'm more proud of than introduce my children. On my immediate left is my brilliant and talented 7th grade daughter, who goes to all kinds of events with me, Chair. She has the polish and presence of that I see in a lot of adults. And it's not because mom and dad did anything about that. She has really cultivated her own way in life, and it's incredibly impressive. Also to my immediate left is my 5th grade daughter, Jane. We call her Amazing Jane because she never forgets anything she's ever read. She'll come from the back seat of the car and say, oh, well, you know, Venezuelan pickles are really related to octopuses or something, you know, and you're like, I didn't know that. And she's like, yeah, I read that 3 years ago in science class. Overwhelmingly impressed with her. And so as she grows up, she'll be doing some absolutely amazing thing like her sister. So thank you, Chair.
Awesome. Welcome, guys. Thanks, y'all, for being here. Any other kids I missed out there? No. Ms. Blakewell.
Good morning. Thank you. For this morning's meeting, the plan for the meeting, we're going to take you through the quick agenda. I just want to point out a couple of things from the March meeting. The agenda materials are very similar to what we reviewed in March, but as you may recall, there was an extensive discussion, kind of about the review and some questions for Dr. Corrado and Ralph Stone. We have them here today. So much of this meeting will be the content that we went over in March, but I think at a greater detail and discussion point than that. And then there are some additional items in here, which we'll go through the format of that in a moment. And hopefully everyone noticed the reformat of the materials where you
I'm assuming everybody's running late.
Send documents So if
Hi.
eliminate.
Mayor Brunson?
Probably. I'm walking in the door now. I've just got into the
Hey,
parking
guys,
structure,
guys,
so
guys, guys.
I'll get there as soon as I can find a spot on the
put yourself-
penthouse floor.
Put
Okay,
yourself on mute.
I'm just gonna stay online.
So in the back, it seems like the people online can't hear us. Here's Councilmember Horland, just in time. Oh, okay. Okay.
We heard you, though.
So, so let's pause. Yeah, hi, good morning. Let's pause for a moment so we can check on the status to see if they can hear us online. Thank you.
See, kids, this is how every meeting goes. This is wonderful, smooth as silk.
Can you hear me now?
It's good trouble.
We're pausing for a moment because without the online members, we don't have a quorum either. So we just need to make sure that they can hear us. So. can the members online hear us yet? Mayor Brunson and Mayor Gomez? We are working on audio. We are working on audio. Like, hi, can Mayor Brunson and Mayor Gomez hear us? Can you hear us? Mayor Brunson and Mayor Gomez, if you could let us know if you can hear us? I think, we're going to have to pause until we have a physical quorum because Mayor Brunson can't hear us yet. Mayor Gomez is in the parking garage, so she's on the way.
Okay, cue the music.
Yes, can we cue the music? If you're online, I apologize, but we're going to get started as soon as the fifth member arrives, or we can get Mayor Brunson to be able to hear us.
Normally we get this done pretty quickly here. I'm pretty good at moving.
Yeah, Gomez is in the garage, so she's, they're just.
They're restarting, they're restarting the system.
I think the introduction aspect in the beginning is appropriate. There's no action to be taken.
Exactly, that's what I said, so let's, my over-under is gonna be shot, we've got to be out here by noon today.
No, that's exactly, I mean, that's, I think at this point, we need to do right here.
As soon as Josh comes back, we'll start.
And Mr. Chair, we'll make a note that the proceedings are being recorded, fully
Yes.
open,
I'm sorry?
so, and no action is going to be taken until the quorum is present.
Mayor Brunson, can you hear us?
You guys want a quick picture with the big gavel?
Okay, Gomez is almost here. Brunson can't hear us because they can't log back in here. I'm gonna throw away my phone in a second.
Ms. Blake Boy,
Okay, hi.
Let's get
welcome back.
started.
Okay, we're starting.
it's to you.
It is to me, that's me, right? Okay. So let's talk about the process for the meeting today. The agenda item materials that we have today, I think you may notice they were reformatted. The framework continues to take us through the comments that were received as of April 17th from the public. And here's Mayor Gomez. So the framework,
Ms. Playboy,
the,
can we put that screen on our monitors here?
if you can hear us in the back, if we could put the, what's on the projector on the member screens, that would be great.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, so the
Ms.
framework.
Boyd, take 3, please.
The framework document, you may recall, that was what you adopted last summer as kind of our roadway map for this process. We've been amending it and adding to it as we've gone through, either from the discussions that you've had, from the subject matter expert presentations, or from the public comment that's been added to the end. So that document's always evolving. The form that you have before you was last updated April 17th. That will continue to be updated with comments and from either you, the public, or staff. The Section 2 policies has been reformatted to have a summary at the beginning. And the intention of that summary is what we will follow today to go through each of the substantive changes. And it also includes an underline and strike through are the changes that were made through last month. Double underline, double strike through are changes since last month. That will be the same for permitted uses. There's a summary at the beginning of that section. Recommended practices, there is no summary because it's such a short section that it's just 3 or 4 pages, but the grayed out area differentiates between the changes. And then the future conditions and social resilience maps are included in your backup. We'll talk about those really when we get to section 2.21 regarding climate change and resiliency planning. And then the support documents and comments are included at the end of that. And that's any written comment that we've received since the beginning of this process. In addition to the materials that are in your book, posted on the BrowardNext website is a resources and education page, and those are articles and documents that we've used as we've been developing the proposed changes. So it's a great resource just in general related to resiliency planning, affordable housing, transportation, all posted there on the BrowardNext site also. So that's the format of what the meeting, how it will work today, and we will be going in order. So as I mentioned, the framework was approved in June 2024. We've talked about what it includes, the staff recommendations, status information, steering committee directives, and the summary of the interested parties' comments. And just as a reminder, what you see before you today in the strike through and underline and double strike through and double underline are not staff recommendations as of yet. These are just suggestions that are based on all of the pieces that we have before you. So you won't be making the formal recommendation to the Planning Council until this is all pulled together. You know, at the end of summer, that's when you'll be making your recommendation to the Planning Council. So what you're talking about today is what you kind of want to see at your next discussion. And these are not formal staff recommendations.
And just to clarify also, it's really, we're getting to decide what we actually want to put in the documents, the comments back on, correct?
Right,
Okay.
right. So also in your backup materials, I forgot to mention this, I apologize, is the next slide. Part of the discussion today, it was supposed to be the administrative rules document in whole. And as a reminder, the administrative rules document is the implementation document for the plan. So it's not new or separate policies, but it's how staff reviews, it's a guide, it's guidance for local governments and interested parties on how specific and particular parts of the plan works. Based on the discussion last month, and the fact that the administrative rules document cannot be readopted in whole until the conclusion of this part of the process, we felt it was better to hold that back holistically because it just would have added more to the discussion. And we really don't even know what the content of that will fully be until we finish the policy and permitted uses piece. So once that's adopted, you know, we're drafting that language, but it's not really a necessary part for you to review right now. So we felt it really was premature, even though we had this great idea about what we had, it made more sense to hold that, with the exception of two pieces. And one piece that we have in your books today, and we're going to talk about this before we delve into the policies, because this is almost a separate discussion. This is related to Article 5, and this is the in lieu of fee if a land use plan amendment that adds more than 100 dwelling units to the Broward County Land Use Plan is unable to meet Policy 2.16.2 regarding affordable housing. What does all that mean? That means you have an applicant come in, the city that they're proposing to develop in doesn't have an affordable housing study that can be provided to the county for review. There are buyout factors for that are outlined in this implementation document. Obviously, these are not requirements. They're opportunities to pass go if you're unable to meet that policy with your study and with the city's criteria and policies. Right now, the in lieu of options are 15% of the project's affordable housing units would be designated as affordable for a period of at least 30 years. That's one option. Or there's a payment option right now. And currently, that is $1 per gross square foot per dwelling unit. So basically, if someone's building one-bedroom apartments, that could be $750 or $800 per unit. It's for every unit in the development. However, when Policy 2.16.4, affectionately referred to as the Geller policy, was adopted into the plan, the in lieu of fee for that was adopted at right now $10,609. It escalates 3% annually, so that's where we're at. It started at $10,000. And staff's been talking with Ralph Stone and with other county staff, and it's felt that if you're going through the land use plan amendment process and you want to buy out of that, it would be more appropriate to have all of the in lieu of fees the same. So this piece we did want to bring to you for discussion, because if we wait until after the adoption of the policies, that puts us about a year out from where we are right now. And there could be, there could be an activity center proposed. There could be a lot of different things that happen that, kind of a missed opportunity. So if the council wants to have a discussion about that, we're available to answer any questions. Otherwise, we could pursue possibly for your June agenda, having that on as an agenda item, because administrative rules document items only take one hearing at the Planning Council and one hearing at the County Commission. There's no Chapter 163 process to go through.
Excellent. Any discussion? Okay. I think it sounds like it's going to come back for us in June.
Silence is golden. Thank you.
And remember, are we having a meeting in June?
We do have a meeting in June, and Chair DeGiorgio is going to be absent.
Okay.
But the vice chair will be here, right?
May
We
fall
will
on
make
you.
sure that the vice chair will be here so that
He's
the
just-
secretary does not have
He's gone for
to
2 weeks.
run the
Are we
meeting.
having a May meeting?
We are having a May meeting, May 22nd.
Is there sufficient time to notice that meeting to do this in May instead of June?
There is sufficient time to notice it. Generally, I mean, what staff would normally do is send this out for some comment, because it's not tied to the Chapter 163 process, and it's so much quicker. If this was going through the Chapter 163 process, I would say we could take it in May, send it out for comment, and get comments back before a second hearing. So if you don't want to send out for public comment, that would be,
Dr. Jim, I think it's important we do get some public comments on this because it is a decent policy shift. So I'm, June is not pushing it that far. I'm okay
Roger.
with that.
okay.
Okay, please proceed.
Okay, great, thank you. So this is just a summary of what I went through earlier of just the new format, the strike through, underline, double strike through, double underline, and then a slight revision to the icons and how the housing is referred to, single building, housing densification, as opposed to, I can't even remember what we saw last month, just kidding. Okay, so with that, we will start. And as I was saying, the summary portion of your materials will keep you in this order, or you can use the regular version, which has grayed out, if you want to see the context of the other policies that it's in. And here we go. The first change is I'm not going to read the numbers, I'm just going to go in order. I'm going to read the numbers. Forget what I just said. 2.1.1, update. It feels unnatural not to read the numbers. That's why yeah, I'm a mess, clearly. Right, thank you. So an update to include resiliency just in the opening section of the plan, and that goes along with the with sustainability and the future development of the county. And I want to defer to the chair. Are you just going to stop if you have a question as we go along the way?
I'm looking for hands to be raised, and we're
Okay.
just going to stop along the way, because
Okay.
coming back would be too much, so it would be too cumbersome.
great.
So whenever I see somebody's hand raised, and if you could see somebody online that I can't see, just let me know if somebody has a question online.
Okay, so Mayor Brunson's the only one online, so
Okay.
Mayor Brunson,
Want people to say the word chair?
Yeah. That'd be perfect. That's a great idea to say chair, and I'll recognize you.
okay, great. Policy 2.2.1, recognizing density exceptions with affordable housing. Policy 2.2.2, clarify the intent. That eliminates the word flexibility, which is really a housekeeping, because I thought it confused the concept with the flexibility rules that we use right now. 2.2.5, memorialize alternative housing type density calculations. You may recall the Affordable Housing Master Plan, a focus on densification. This is to recognize an opportunity for single residential occupancy. I do expect a lot of feedback from the public on that because we've set the bar, some feedback on how many units should count as one unit. So I anticipate feedback on this, but I think it's very important to recognize this type of development in the county plan and to have a way to move forward for the community. 2.2.6, eliminate for lack of advocacy. This was about streamlining densities. We haven't had a lot of feedback through the years. Most of the feedback we got in original 2017 BrowardNext update was to maintain the categories that we have. Many municipalities were comfortable with that for single-family neighborhoods and those lower density areas. 2.2.6 is the new replacement policy, encouraging a variety of housing, wealth building, economic security, ensuring that the plan is supportive of that.
Chair? In my review of this and looking at other locales, there's clearly a range of involvement the county wants to have with municipalities, all the way from saying nice things to saying nice things and strongly encouraging, and sometimes saying we're going to set some goals, and then kind of moving up the ladder to saying, hey, those goals didn't work. We as a county, given the nature of housing and work across the 1,300 square miles of Broward County, have to do more. I don't understand what current policy is between Broward County. I think it's still in some degree of flux between Broward County and our 31 municipalities. But does this reflect the current state of affairs? My understanding is that there are goals for municipalities to meet for varied housing, and this doesn't reflect those goals. So I just am curious about that question, and then what is it we want to say as policy to make sure that people understand the need and urgency for a variety of housing types across the county.
If I understand what you're saying, I think there's a differentiation here. This is the foundation of the residential category, and I believe what you're referring to really is related to affordable housing. And the, I will just say deficiencies that have been identified for local governments for providing those housing at the moderate, low, and very low level. Are you talking about affordable housing when you're talking about a directive to the cities, or?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is strictly for the residential category and kind of the expectations that the county's setting out for that. And I think that that's a discussion more for the affordable housing, the incentive side of the policy, which falls in the 2.16 section of the plan. If they'd like to see something additional there.
It's fine. I'm reading this sometimes as a resident of Broward County.
Right.
And if I was reading this and I got to page 2, which would be great, I would read this as applying to all of Broward County residentials. And while it doesn't call out affordable, it does say varied. And it may be confusing to people as it's currently organized, and that's fine.
Okay.
But I'm going to continue to advocate for stronger and stronger county participation in getting us to a better Broward County. And when we say things that are encourage or strongly encourage, that says something about what our policy is, and it's not in general the way that I think that we should be going. So if we're going to leave everything about affordable housing in 2.16, that's fine. I'm just saying that the public, when they read this, may not recognize that this isn't the section where we talk about affordable housing.
I think we could, considering that comment, come up with something for 2.2.7, like another, we can work on that to try to address that concern within there.
It's not a strong concern. So
Is there a way
use
to
it or lose it.
refer, is there a way to refer in 2.2.7, a way to refer to 2.16, maybe to
I
say
mean,
something
right,
about it?
maybe,
Just refer to it.
right.
Although I would say,
And-
if I may, Chair, just, 2.2.6 does say Broward County and local governments are encouraged to promote a variety of housing types that allow residents of all income level ranges an opportunity to build economic security. So it does reference the goal, but I get what you're saying in terms of it's not the meat and potatoes.
Right.
We could try something a little more explicit. Andy,
Yeah.
you had a comment?
Well, just, this as a standalone seems fairly innocent and maybe not as directive and strong as one would like, but this kind of sets a tone for the other policies. It also provides cover for the county and for the cities in adopting their comprehensive plans and their zoning and land development codes down line as, if challenged, as being consistent and being authorized by the Broward County Land Use Plan. So it has some downstream effects that probably only lawyers think of, when we're defending things, but it does provide some cover for the cities in pursuing these policies. So the whole thing, this working with the other policies hopefully will enhance our ability to provide that, what we're looking for.
Okay. Ms.
Okay, thank
Blakemore.
you. 2.3.4, sorry, I'm just turning my pages too. This is just a clarification of the intent of the policy related to commerce lands and a clarification of the administrative rules piece. The activity centers policy, so there's these next 5, 6, 7, 8, there's 9 policies updated here. Memorializing dwelling unit substitution for all activity centers. We talked about this based on an interpretation that the council made in March of last year. It felt like this was the appropriate time to streamline and recognize this in the plan, so it would be very clear for that. Promoting safety of transportation network for non-vehicular users in these these designated areas that are downtowns and their city centers. Encouraging alternative parking options, reductions, alternative materials to enhance resiliency planning also, cool material consideration. An elimination of site planning criteria, which may sound counterintuitive, but it's the Broward County Land Use Plan, and the site planning criteria is left to the local governments. So the policies really support that, but eliminating those pieces that are so specific that really can't be controlled at all by the county plan. I think Mayor Gomez had a question.
Everybody knows parking ratios and those get me a little bit prickly.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Sorry. We've been trying, I think, in policy to dictate parking situations that have created problems for the municipalities when they are doing their development. And because developers will rely on what county policy is than what dictates the city policy, because we all try to make sure we work with these policies, we're restricting parking to such a point where we're creating problems for businesses to be able to have enough parking, and even residential places to have enough parking for when people have visitors. And so I think that the continual push to necessarily reduce parking ratios creates more problems than it actually works for resiliency. And hiding under the umbrella of resiliency is just what that does. So I'm not really, and shared parking also really doesn't work very well. I've got plenty of examples to show where places are having trouble because they don't contemplate what happens when 3 different businesses are working at full force at all hours, and then people decide they're never gonna go to those businesses again because they cannot park. So I think we just need to be mindful of how strong we put certain things in on the effects it has on development and city base.
Thank you. Ms. Blakemore?
Thank you, and I would also add to that, just, and I should have mentioned this the first time too, besides resiliency, there's also, I think, a refocus or reorientation on, on the individual, moving away from cars and that, so, and the policy is a should policy, and, that leaves it, there's some areas that are, I think, are considering these types of options, and there's some cities that are not. So, I understand the concern. Policy 2.4.10, I think we're at, nope, we did not eliminate site planning criteria. 2.4.11, this is a policy, like we said, refocusing on pedestrian, bicycle, and transit usage, moving away from the focus on the automobile. Again, 2.4.11, I'm sorry, 12. Sorry, I'm forgetting to turn my page. 2.4.12. Deanne's going to be in charge of the PowerPoint now. Memorializing the, sorry,
These kids got you flustered today.
I do.
Wait for their questions. Seriously. Good questions, I'm sure.
Oh, sorry, okay, 2.4.12. I should be looking at my plan also, and this is just the, this actually is just for the reporting criteria for the interlocal agreements. So that's all that is, sorry, I just got confused. It happens. All right, now we're moving into parks and conservation. So a little bit of history of this section and the evolution of it. This policy 2.5.4 and the ensuing policies really came about in, between 2006 and 2008, when the county was really struggling with golf course conversion and how that was working, and what the county, felt that they could, kind of put in the county plan to assist cities, what they were struggling with also. So that was the evolution of the policy. So much of this was really geared towards golf course preservation, open space preservation that way. So there's a couple modifications in this general section. 2.5.4 expands that to include conservation areas. Right now, it's just open space, community and recreational areas, and publicly owned lands on the barrier island.
Chair.
I have Mayor Levy.
So,
Thank you.
I think there's a reason why the county was facing and is facing, and property owners and municipalities are bringing forward ways to add, for example, residential development on golf courses and converting them because of the failure of a lot of those golf courses, and some of them might be municipally owned, some of them might be privately owned that have failed. And there's ways that those lands could contribute in a much greater way, given the elimination of the viability of the golf course to a city and to the county. And so my concern is that if we're expanding the language to include community and recreational areas, I would want to know how we're defining community and recreational areas, because a community space that is a building that is a community center, for example, is not necessarily a conservation area, and I get the ideal of a policy that wants to preserve conservation areas. Recreational areas, if you think of a park, I can understand that, although there are adaptive ways to use parks, like for example here in the city of Fort Lauderdale, I think it's called Huizinga Park, where they're putting in a restaurant in the corner, and it's gonna make the park more active, and I think be a better result than the space that is there now. While that could be an item for debate between people, I don't know that the county should be, prescribing or wanting to strongly encourage against the idea of how municipalities can decide what adaptive uses they might want to prefer to create, better community and recreational areas. And so how do you balance the flexibility, Barbara, for being able to do things that are good and realistic and advantageous in many ways, economically, also recreationally, with this language?
So listening to what you're saying and reading the policy at the same time, I think one modification, if the committee wanted to see a change to that, is defining it as the categories, conservation. So it would be like the conservation use, change it to recreation and open space use, have it consistent with the permitted use section of the plan. Aside from just this kind of generic use of that, then that would clearly define what lands we're looking at.
So there's two pieces to the mayor's question, and the second part is, do we want to use the word strongly encourage also? So it's really the definition piece and then the use of strongly. So is there further thought on that, Dr. Zeman?
I really like strongly, and I'm just kind of going back to Urban Planning 101, where they teach the fact that we would never have Manhattan had we not had Central Park. It just simply wouldn't have developed. It would have been Wall Street, and everybody would have moved to Bronx and other areas, and we'd have like the sprawl that we have in Detroit. So the park made Manhattan, and we have, I think, a really big issue with park deserts in Broward County. And I'm worried a little bit about this for a different reason, and I'll bring up second, but I like the strongly encourage, because it's so important to our economic development and to the well-being of our people. I'm very sensitive to what goes in after that sentence. It should say something that's clear to everybody. I kind of like Barbara Blake-Boy's recommended change. But to me, that change and maybe some kind of call out to areas that encourage, that add to our resiliency would be great too, because these things are starting to be lumped together, but that's a different issue maybe for the next land use plan in 7 years.
So I do like the idea of defining and giving more specificity to the words that are used, conservation with a capital C, and if it's later defined, I think that's a lot tighter. But, while we're on the policy, what was in, and maybe this brings up the idea of needing to discuss the definition of just community, or just highlight that, Barbara, I don't know if you have it handy to flip to definitions and what community areas mean versus recreational, and I agree with parks. For example, we don't want to lose parks. But if there is some defunct community center of a city, and a city wants to, rebuild its community center or do something, I don't think it's appropriate to have, if you're kind of replacing like for like in some ways, and maybe even adding a public-private partnership that might result in the community center improvement, I don't want to necessarily, deter cities from being able to improve and renew and modernize their facilities, because there's not necessarily a negative detriment to that modernization oftentimes. So I just don't know that we should have a policy that maybe suggests as if you can't touch it, so to speak. So how do we clarify that there isn't the impression that you can't touch it?
So, to me, Mayor Levy, I feel like to strongly encourage is definitely not a mandate, in my opinion. It's something that we should try to do, but it does give the flexibility. I'm thinking about where you stayed up late one night watching the Botanical Garden, right, in Pompano Beach, and we're trying to improve that property. So we are keeping most of that park that is existing today, actually enhancing the entire park. So I get your point completely, but I think it still does allow us to say, this still stays as a park, even though we're going to put a restaurant on the space, we're going to put an event center, but you're still preserving it, so it didn't go all the way to, which some people are advocating for, let's just make it more, housing there, even though that park is really important in that location.
And I agree with that.
I understand your point completely. I'm not as worried, I don't think, with the strongly encourage as you are.
I'm not so worried with strongly encourage. For me, it was more about the definition of community, and
I
is
agree.
that too broad? And does that suggest that, land designated community, can't be touched when there are adaptive ideas to maintain community uses, but nonetheless might change the built area on the community property as opposed to park, which I would call more conservation and recreational.
Chair, if I may, thank you. I'm sensitive to Mayor Levy's comments. I don't read the policy as saying that you can't redevelop an existing community center, and I concur that with both my colleagues here, I like to strongly encourage. So I think with your amendment and language, Ms. Blake Boy, I would be comfortable with that change.
Okay. Mayor Gomez.
I agree with defining community a little better, because people hear restaurants, people hear food, and that's commercial.
I agree.
And there are prime examples that would say that would never happen then on a park course or a golf course, where you're not converting the golf course, you're adding a restaurant to enhance the playability and the enjoyment of it.
That's right.
I will tell you that there's a certain city that will never allow that to happen right now without 100% of the commission voting for it and 100% of 400 feet of the properties around it. You never get 400%. So therefore, that ability to activate that park is likely never to happen, no matter how good an idea it might be, because a restaurant would be considered more commercial in development terminology, I believe. So I think you may want to have that defined a little more carefully or clearly.
Great.
Yeah, I think the magic is in the definition,
Sure.
and we can get to that when we get to it. But just wanted to highlight that,
Thank you, Mayor.
aspect of looking at these lands.
Excellent, thank you. Dr. Zeman.
Thanks so much, Chair. I'm also mindful of the state park legislation that's coming through and the debacle that we had with some substantial redirection of the use of that land that came up quickly, got crushed quickly as appropriate, and now is getting codified in law. So our state parks are making a move in absolutely the right direction, and I hope Florida someday decides to actually invest in our state parks rather than just sit on them. My concern actually is with the public view of the last half of this as well. I live on the barrier island. I live on the fence line of a state park. I'm very, very blessed to have moved there. At the same time, there's much better outcry in Broward County about park deserts than there is about protecting parks on barrier islands, who all have their very, very strong political capital to make sure that that doesn't happen all by themselves, and they don't need county policy to encourage that. But I would prefer that something be in the header of this policy that talks about eliminating park deserts in Broward County. And why do I feel so strongly about it? The greatest opportunity to eliminate park deserts is to do reciprocal use agreements with schools. City of Fort Lauderdale 6 years ago signed all 27 schools in their city property to a reciprocal use agreement. They spent $12 million upgrading facilities, and now in Fort Lauderdale, every school in the city limit is open the second the last kid walks off campus. And it's open for people to walk their dogs, to play pickleball, to run on the fields. And the reason that was done is that it's government land. And we ought to be using government land for government services, not just for the primary service that they have, which in this case is a school, but that is not done in the other 212 campuses around Broward County, and it should be. And so if we have language in our policy that says that we want to eliminate park deserts where they exist, and that's a land use specific definition, if I'm not wrong, because I remember doing a big study on park deserts in the city of Fort Lauderdale. So someone has a definition for what that really means, and it's like no park accessible within a 10-minute walk or something like that. I think our policy should be to eliminate park deserts in Broward County. I mean, that's just good policy, but I know that that's going to come back to our schools. There's really a tremendous opportunity to open up after hours. And so I'm kind of putting myself on report, but I would like our municipal partners to come and talk to me so we can open up all those schools across all of Broward County.
Chair, if I could, just Barbara, I think the same idea makes sense to, when we say especially those publicly owned lands on the barrier island, we use the defined term coastal barrier island as defined in the definition section, which does have an exception to, as provided in Florida statutes, mainland areas which were separated from the mainland by artificial channelization.
Okay.
It stays true to the definition of
Where-
barrier island as provided in Florida statutes and in the definition in the plan. That should not be a problem. These are terms of
Got
art.
it, got it.
Got it,
As-
thank you.
As far as, I just want to, because this falls into the next policy too, 2.5.5, the next policy, the same terminology. I want to clarify, so the community, what we're proposing, or what I was saying was the capitalization would refer to the permitted uses section of the plan, so that would be the definition of it, the permitted uses.
But then there's also the next tab in our booklet.
Is definitions.
Is definitions, and
Right.
coastal barrier island is
Oh,
defined.
I wasn't actually speaking to specifically to that. I was talking about the community use and just making sure that that was, because you talked about that for the.
Mayor Levy was just clarifying just the language in there so it matched the language in the definition. I believe that's what you were trying to do there, correct, Mayor?
Gotcha.
Yes, just to capitalize and
Yeah.
to basically add the word, to change the last two words, barrier island, to
Coastal.
coastal barrier island, capitalized letters. Which
I
they
think
are.
that stays consistent.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to Dr. Zeman's point, did you have further thought on that regarding park deserts? Any way to incorporate anything in there with, strongly encourage or discourage park deserts or however we
Yeah,
can?
I think that, I mean, part of this is I have to go back and we just will have to go back and
Okay.
look at, I think, holistically. But I would also add to that point is that in the community park inventories that every city prepares to demonstrate that their compliance with at least 3 acres per 1,000 permanent residents, there is criteria in the existing implementation to say the shared park space actually does count. And many of the cities do count school space currently under that. So it is accounted for as far as implementation section. But I guess what I'm hearing from you is you would like to kind of amp up those agreements to ensure that cities are kind of being able to use those lands.
No, they have that tool in the toolbox, I think, is basically just kind of continue to encourage that. I think that's where Dr. Zeman's coming from. Again, you don't have to have all the answers today. These are things that are being brought up, and if you have suggestions for us in the future, that's great. But I think these are all very good points.
Gotcha.
Let's continue unless there's.
Okay, thank
any
you.
other- Thank you.
Okay, 2.5.6. Okay, so now we're delving into the resiliency piece too. So this is for the golf courses, and this is related to when stormwater retention is evaluated for golf course, ensuring that the criteria are met. So it's redefining, or I'm sorry, it's further defining the management of stormwater for those golf course policies. And then the other piece is the mitigation of environmental contamination, and this is related to Phase 1 and Phase 2. And this is just a reexamination of what we've seen as an evolution through the years of those Phase 1 and Phase 2s are alternatives that have been submitted, and it authorizes county staff to accept an equivalent or superior to those studies. So it doesn't loosen it up, but it ensures that the county's accounting for whatever, data also is available. 2.6.1 and 2.6.2 related to access to fresh food, ensuring that community gardens are not excluded from
I'm
the
sorry,
permission.
Chair?
Mayor.
Just catching up to subsection D of 2.5.6 regarding the mitigation of environmental contamination. I don't know, I think making it as deemed acceptable by the appropriate Broward County staff leaves to it a lot of discretionary, subjective view of what is deemed to be beyond what might be an environmental assessment by an environmental, engineer. And while, of course, the county has its own regulatory authority, I don't know that in the policy document, it makes sense to make it, or equivalent or superior assessment as deemed acceptable by appropriate Broward County staff. I don't know if this is meant to give flexibility, or am I reading it wrong?
It's meant to give flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not meant to, it's meant for situations, we've had this come up in the past, I would say, 3 years, where the county staff wanted to be able to accept something that wasn't a Phase 1 or Phase 2 because it was not called that, but it actually exceeded the requirements of that.
Okay.
And it's a gray area, so we felt that the clarification was necessary to give them the ability to, because right now it's Phase 1, Phase 2.
I got you.
And there are alternative evaluations that are available that are superior to even that.
This is trying to allow flexibility for municipalities, Mayor.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, policy 2.9.3. This is the strengthening of fracturing information. And just to assure everyone, this was tied to a question last month. It was already in there, but also ensuring that these policies are going to remain in the plan, strengthen that policy. But we are proposing later to eliminate the mining category from the permitted uses,
Yes.
as there are no lands designated mining that currently exist or have existed for decades. So the policies will remain.
You've addressed our concerns. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Under compatibility, policy 2.10.1, eliminating the within 500 feet, we talked about last month in an urban area, within 500 feet can be, it led to a lot of confusion with county staff for these compatibility reviews and how that operated. Policy 2.10.3, we're talking about really the original policy considers the established character of these neighborhoods. So this adds in encouragement along transportation and transit corridors and activity centers, because as we see redevelopment, that's where we really see it going in the county. So we reevaluated the policy in those terms and a modernization of that.
May I ask a question? How did you decide when to use strongly encourage and encourage?
In most cases, strongly encourage, I've been here too long that I know the history of this. When we go back to those parks policies and we talk about that strongly encourage, Angelo Castillo's not here today, so I can say his name in case he watches this. But my strong recollection of that was it evolved as part of the discussion and what the planning council recommended at that time. That's my recollection.
Chair, I will make some recommendations later to go beyond that. So I understand the graduated level between encourage, strongly encourage, and then in the absence of current government regulation, we strongly encourage you, which means, hey, Mayor, if you can't figure out how to do this, we'll make you do it. And there are some things for which that hammer is appropriate, and there'll be some opportunities to change language. On this particular thing, if you don't mind, Chair, I love this
Mayor,
change. Kind of the previous policy was so NIMBY, it made me almost lose my breakfast. And, we can't get past doing good for our county if we can't get past policies that got us in the mess we're in now. And so the old policy, sounded like, the 1970s calls and they want their policy back. And this one sounds much more modern, on its way to actually becoming modern. So I appreciate the change.
So did you want strongly, or you?
I just asked the question how we put that in there. It strongly seems to fit there to me, but I don't want to.
I added it in my notes, so that's
Okay.
why. Yes.
Does anybody have an issue with that?
Remind me where we are?
2.10.3, page 11.
Right.
Oh, well.
Where would strongly fit in there?
Depends on if you're in the definition.
Continue to encourage, continue to strongly encourage.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Use plan shall continue to strongly encourage local governments as opposed to just encourage.
We got a shall in there anyway, so it's, it's a shall.
I mean, I look strongly, it's okay. I mean, it just reinforces what
Right.
our main push, which is put the density on the transportation and transit
You-
corridors, which is the sensible thing, I think, for the county.
Perfect.
Okay.
What you wrote down as a comment is a
Yep,
good
okay,
comment.
got it. Okay.
One half and a dozen in another, because you have a shall. Shall beats strongly any day in a legal definition. So, whatever.
It works.
It works.
Okay,
No one heard you.
2.11.5.
That's okay, nobody needs to hear me. It's better that way.
This is modernization and clarification of the intent of the policy related to septic tanks. Elimination of policy 2.11.6 because it's a redundant policy now that the other policy is updated. Post-disaster planning and redevelopment. We are waiting for, I thought we would have an update from emergency management about the other policies. We do not yet, so we'll still be working towards that. But policy 2.12.6, this is a policy to ensure that local governments are able to permit emergency operations on park sites.
Perfect sense.
It's very important. We worked with the county parks on making sure that this language reflected their needs also.
School board member Zeman.
Chair DeGiorgio. I just want to add one word as a proposal, which would be before or after. One of the issues that we have now, which is a wonderful thing, is we flood utility repair trucks to an area before the hurricane comes. And we get constant requests to park on our schools, and we try to do the best I can, but sometimes we have like 3 parking spots left, and we let them use it to the extent possible. And we now have an MOU with them to use it wherever they can on school property. But before disasters, it'd be great to use parks as well, if that change has no objection.
That's a good change.
No, it's a good change.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Policy 2.14.3, this is a transportation discussion. The clarification of the title of this is related because concurrency and impact fees weren't really, it's really about transportation holistically. 2.14.3 is when the local government is going to ensure that public facilities and services are available to serve. And that's kind of it's an overarching theme of this plan that I like to just remind everyone of, is a lot of these tools and incentives that are in the plan rely on the local government determining that sufficient facilities and services, public facilities and services are available. Because a lot of times, and this is a separate discussion, but I think at the right time, there's a question of, well, 2.16.4 just allows all this density. How do we know that there's sufficient facilities and services available? That onus is on the local government at that level, and that applies, at plat or site plan. So that's the update of that policy. Policy 2.14.7, another clarification of intent and what actually happens for the highway capacity methodology, which is not that the county commission approves it, but that's accepted by Broward County for analytical purposes. Policy 2.14.8, just a clarification of the model that is used during the evaluation of land use plan amendments to determine if they impact the regional transportation network. And then relocation of policy 2.14.10. Under the public schools section, a couple of updates there. We talked about last month also related to traffic circulation, and that the county supports the exemption of school impact fees for affordable dwelling units consistent with the criteria and without a maximum as related to Florida statutes. Do you want to comment, or are you
I would.
leaving?
Thank you very much.
Yes.
On the first one, an innocuous change, and on the bottom one, a recommendation to delete, and I'll explain why. Broward County and its local governments coordinating with our school board on and around circulation is wonderful. It would be stronger if we wrote parents and staff as well. One of the big changes that we just funded up in Coconut Creek is a complete rebuild of the traffic infrastructure. One of the disappointments about spending $2 million to improve the movement of buses and cars dropping off kids is that the school and the community never got together and figured out how to carpool. And so you have an opportunity for one parent to bring 3 or 4 kids, and instead, we never kind of went to that step and ended up having to spend the money because emergency vehicles just can't get in there. And so we had to do this. On the second one, 15.7, this is a policy and a budget issue that Broward County School Board has to work out on its own. I don't know that Broward County School Board should tell Broward County how to spend its money, and I don't think Broward County should tell Broward County Schools how to spend its either. This is an issue that we have allowed for a long time, but to the extent that this sounds a little bit pushy. Or maybe I'm just sensitive to it because I sit there. But shall continue to encourage the school board. We do it because it's good policy. If we run out of money, we'll stop doing it. If we think it's not good for Broward County schools, we'll stop doing it. So it seems strange for an equal branch of government like Broward County Public Schools is to be included in the Broward County policy related to this. So that's my input. I would prefer it not to be in here.
Mayor Gomez.
I reserve my comment.
Okay.
Well, I think what this is pointing to is, the encouragement of the county, encouraging the school district to assist in creating the groundwork for additional affordable dwelling units and exempting the school impact fees, of course, from them. And so I think, Dr. Zeman, what you're mentioning is that, and you've been an advocate for affordable housing, development. And so I think it's consistent with probably what the school district would want to do. But like you said, I think, having the flexibility if the school district is in financial trouble and can't, is what you're saying, exempt, such dwelling units from a school impact fee. You want to reserve the right to not have it, an encouragement here in the plan. I mean, that's basically it, right? That's what you said.
I have never considered telling Broward County what to do about the port or to do about how they assess property tax, even though, all those things impact the interest of people moving here and going to our schools. I mean, we're all in this together. But this section, to me, treads on our fiduciary responsibility to run a great school system. We will continue to support exceptions to all kinds of fees related to affordable housing because it's the right thing for the whole county. I worry that when you're told to do something, sometimes you build up resistance to doing it. And so I don't like Broward County telling Broward County schools what to do, and I don't like Broward County schools telling Broward County what to do. There's good lines for good reasons, And this just steps over the line for me.
So I've got Councilmember Horland and I've got Mayor Gomez, but before anyone else, Barb, you wanted to respond to
Oh,
something very quickly?
I want to say, there's two directions that we could go. You could suggest, elimination of the policy, and if there's an idea that Andy and I just talked about, if there's a will to keep a version of this, we have an idea, and then you could decide on that.
What's the idea?
The
Tell
idea
us the idea.
is, it's two pieces. One, we could make it a should policy. Two, we could add, we could modify it to add like a consistency with the, with budgetary constraints. We could add something on there that, I wouldn't say would soften it, but would lend to what Dr. Zeman was saying. So,
Okay, we'll put that on hold.
okay, perfect.
Councilmember Horland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sensitive to Dr. Zeman's comments and on this. I'm comfortable with leaving it in there. I do like the change. Again, it's not a mandate, it's an encouragement. Understanding that budgets will change, school board members will change. We will not always be here. I think it's important to have something in there as an encouragement.
Mayor Gomez.
This is a policy that we've been working on. Policy is just the outline and the parameters of what we're doing. And a lot of what the added in is, in my opinion, some feel-good stuff to say we're trying to work with one another. And when things come before the Broward County Planning Council, we always have to make sure Broward County Schools has been included. So in my opinion, this policy is just one of those other feel-good items to make sure that we're working together with Broward County Schools, and we're trying to make sure that we've let the schools know where we stand and what we would like. So again, the shall continue is just the same as strongly encourage, as we have should coordinate in the paragraph before. So it's more or less just saying, make sure you work together, people. It's not saying what you actually have to do, but if you should work together, you have no boundaries, consistent with Florida statutes about how you're gonna work on those impact fees. So I think it's more directive for the county than it is to say, school board, you're gonna do this.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Mayor Levy, I saw you said one thing. Did you have a follow-up?
I think the only reason why, this is in here is because Broward County Schools is a large, not only property owner, but a large taxing authority. And I think when we want to try to use all the tools in the toolbox to encourage and incentivize and facilitate affordable housing, I don't know what the exact calculation of school impact fees is offhand. It might be very little. But I don't see any harm in saying, should continue to encourage School Board of Broward County. I mean, it is a big player. I understand, though, where Dr. Zeman's coming from in terms of, does it need to be in here? This is a land use document, and so,
So
Barbara, the idea of calling out impact fees in this document, is that new, or is that always been?
It's not new, there's a couple of pieces of this. I think, like I said, you can either strike the policy, or there's a couple of ideas that, generated from this discussion that could, I think, modify the policy. Impact fees are, and I don't think we want to get into the discussion of, but Broward County is responsible for the collection of those impact fees, and redistributes them back to the school board. It has to be adopted into the Broward County Code of Ordinances to collect those. Every land use plan amendment that has a residential component that comes through is subject to those impact fees.
So I see this, and I really appreciate what you said, Councilmember Horland, because this just reminds us in the future that there is this tool in the toolbox. And we should consider that like we consider everything else. So I don't see this as a mandate that you must do anything. And I think, and I am very, very aware of what Dr. Seaman's concerns are. He doesn't, he would never mandate any other municipality or agency what they can and cannot charge. I don't see it that way. I do see this as like I said, it is another tool. Let's continue to remind folks that there's something there for us to help us with our housing problem in Broward County. So I don't have a problem with the language as it's written. If you wanted to modify it that may soften it, I'm okay with that too.
We come up with something.
So
We hear some very good comments. I think we can craft language that keeps the thrust of this while accommodating the concerns, which I think are well taken. They're well taken. So we can do that.
And this is, again, this is not any final product by any stretch. This is going to go out for other comment, all the concerned agencies, and we'll get it back and have to weigh in on it in the future. I would not like to take it out now, though. I'd like to keep it in for comment.
Just a question to clarify for myself. When and if the Broward County School District exempts school impact fees for particular affordable dwelling units, does that happen on a case-by-case basis, like for any particular application that they would waive or exempt a fee, or we encourage them to adopt a policy that basically always exempts, affordable dwelling units from school impact fees? How is that sort of, acted upon?
So I'll start.
I mean, ideally, it would be a
Or Dr. Zeman can
categorical
start, and I
exemption,
can
but-
weigh
Whoever
in.
would prefer to start, Dr. Seaman.
It is our policy right now, Mayor, to exempt affordable housing that is certified by the county. So if you just want to call it affordable housing but not live by the 30-year rules, we don't accept that, but we do accept if you're going to do that, that we waive
So it's a
impact fees.
categorical exemption right now.
Absolutely. I will remind my colleagues that you're opening up a door. This is new language in this policy about a very small amount of money. I mean, it's tens of millions of dollars to us, but it's very small per unit when it is assessed. That cities voluntarily agreed to rules about it. Some people don't want to follow the rules that their cities agreed to years ago, and I appreciate that, but there's reasons that people need to get into the issue by issue. But for affordable housing, our current policy is to waive impact fees, as long as it's certified housing. I believe that has to remain the purview of Broward County Public Schools. And we don't tell the mayor to speed up inspections when we do affordable housing in Hollywood, do we?
I tell the building department that.
I'm glad that you do. And to your point, right now, the body that I sit on waives impact fees for affordable housing. But I need to have the discretion to do that when it makes sense for Broward County Public Schools. And, Broward County Public Schools has a 110-year history of doing what's right for the community, not just right for itself. So adding this in here, I just feel is just a step too far. And we'll see what the new language comes in. If it says something like recognizes the value of it, Ms. Blakeboy?
Andy?
If the language in some way says it recognizes the value of Broward County Schools waiving that, then I like having it in here because it's just a reminder of our contribution. I really don't like equal-sized governments putting
Yeah,
language in that
understood.
says
Yeah.
you shall do anything, because you really.
Bring something back for us to
You're just,
review.
you're stepping on
Absolutely.
something. Thank you. Appreciate it, Chair.
Okay. Did you want any follow-up to what Dr. Zeman said, or we good where that stands from the question? You said he'll go first, then you'll go. I just want to make sure I let you
We're
talk.
good. We're
Okay,
great.
excellent.
Yes,
Perfect.
thank
Is
you.
that your answer? Great.
Okay.
All right, we're on
Thank
page
you.
7 so far.
Right, sorry, and I'm turning my pages in the actual
Now we're on
document, so
8.
that's why I said the wrong page earlier. Affordable housing bonus density, this is 216.3, 2.16.4, 216.5, and 2.16.6. And I think, part of this maybe where, or Ralph Stone, and Ralph and Jennifer Corrado, Ralph Stone and Jennifer Corrado are both here if there's specific questions about affordable housing or resiliency planning, sorry. So 216.3, this is the bonus density policy, and this is additional opportunities and additional densities that could be available through the update of the policy. So updating right now, there's a limitation of only up to 50 dwelling units per acre for residential categories, not for other categories, but for residential. And we've modified this to be able to expand for lands that are already multifamily housing, generally 16 or higher, to increase that density. So that would be an additional tool that's available through the county plan for these residential densities up to 75 dwelling units per acre. So taking that opportunity to say, if you're already multifamily, you can expand additionally above 50 if agreed upon by the local government per the criteria that's in here. And the criteria that's tied to this isn't, it's actually, it's very generous to the local governments to be able to have the tool available. I'm not saying we're being generous, it's generous policy.
And I think it's consistent with our previous discussions.
Right, densification. So that's the primary piece about this. There is, would be something new, which I think warrants a discussion in the policy, and that has at least 15% of the units are affordable with a minimum of 5% moderate at the moderate income level and a minimum of 10% at the low income levels. That may be worthy of discussion of the breakdown. That's something new in the plan that Ralph and our staff had discussed prior to putting that in the policy. And I do anticipate some interested party and municipal input on that piece. So I just wanted to point that out.
Do we want to have Mr. Stone elaborate on that a little bit, why we thought that was important to put that in there?
Morning, Mr. Chair, members. Couple of things that probably is old news to everybody, and that is that Broward County is dead last in Florida and all 67 counties for units that are available for populations that make 60% of area median income or less, which is about $42,000 a year. That happens to be exactly what 1/2 of all of the employees in Broward County make. We have such a heavily dominated service economy that literally 50% of our employees are making 60% or less. So conversely, as the median income has increased and has had the corollary effect on the value of 120% of area median income, whether it's suggested by a family size of 1, 2, or 3, you're looking at almost a current market income or a current income or a current rent on a monthly basis. It's almost market rate. So right now, the new family of 1 at 120% is $97,000 a year. Family of 2, $110,800. So the real need is for our workers, those 50% of the workers in the county that are at 60%. And in the board's policy direction to us, particularly when they adopted the 10-year master plan, they looked at low income below 80, and they looked at workforce up to 120 and 140, and they looked at market rate. Obviously, the market takes care of market rate, and the board wanted to focus on the lower income, particularly because of the heavy demand for employee need there. And they observed that at that time, and this was almost 2 years ago now, that the state had just passed Live Local, and Live Local really is oriented toward the missing middle, which is the 120. So the hope is that Live Local will kind of find its intent and start to produce the subsidy that's needed for those missing middle at 120. So for all of those reasons, and I apologize for being long-winded about it,
No, it's
just
a good
the really
explanation.
heavy demand is at the lower income levels.
That helped us. Thank you very much. Do we have questions for Mr. Stone? Mayor Gomez.
Hi, how are you?
Good morning.
Good morning. Can you do us a favor, and probably people already know this, but give this to us in numbers, right? So 16, below 16 dwelling units per acre, not to exceed maximum 15 dwelling units is what we have, but not exceed maximum 75 dwelling units. What does it actually mean per dwelling unit? Give us a nice example so we can get our teeth into knowing what's being said, because I have some questions based on that, please.
I kind of use 100 units is the kind of the threshold, because that's where that application goes to the board for affordable housing review. So Out of that number, you're talking about 15 units. So 10 of them would be at the lower level and 5 would be at the workforce level. But, you know, and I don't want to be too alarming about that because we have done when I say we, I'm talking about the planning council and the board and the cities have done a good job at making the payments in lieu of that are associated with trying to generate meaningful revenue to leverage affordable housing sensible for pro formas. And so you're talking about that $10,000 per unit. If we're doing straight budgeting for those 15 units, just you can probably multiply 15 times 300,000. That's not going to work for a developer in their pro forma.
Right.
We can't do that. So I think 10 or 15, probably 10 is the right number out of 100. But you have to be sensitive to the business side of the deal, and that's where our leverage in getting down at that 10,000 per unit works. $1 per square foot will buy you like a bedroom. So
Nothing.
that does not work.
Exactly.
Well,
Ms. Blake Boyd.
Okay.
And I just want to add to the math, to the unit side math of this. So if we have a 4-acre piece of land that's designated 25 units per acre, that's 100 units. So under this policy, because right now they're limited to going to 50 units per acre. So under this policy, that piece of land could potentially go to 300 units 300 units total on that, if okay by the local government.
Yes.
So I just want to show that math there with that 25.
It's
unit.
expanding
It's
the ability
expanding the
of these.
opportunity. So it's an opportunity for local governments without going through a county land use plan amendment to expand the density on the land as long as it meets the affordable housing criteria that's laid out here.
My concern about, and I understand wanting to have an incorporation of low, and the missing middle. But my concern is that somehow in here, we might be a little too stringent on it. I would rather feel that there would be the ability to have a combination plate, not necessarily set. So in using the example, I have 6 workforce housing people that are very qualified for here. I don't have 10. I'm losing that 1 unit. But if it's too strict, I can't use that unit for some workforce that needs it. Between the silver tsunami, between the workforce, between everybody who used to make a decent living getting squeezed out due to insurance and everything else going on, that missing middle is getting much larger than even some of the low at this point in time. Watch it come. You know it's coming. We've talked about this. So I have no problem with incorporating, and I just do have some concerns if we put too strict of a parameter in there with not enough discretion to the municipality, because it's bad enough, and I know you referenced it. I was going to keep my mouth shut earlier, and now I'm not, because you said those little term of art that I'm not exactly a fan of the way it is at this time. Live Local Act is not, in my opinion, the best thing for that missing middle. When you put it in a city that doesn't have the infrastructure already there, and we don't have the say of what to do, and we're putting in policy right now that supposedly gives cities the ability to say something, but not if Live Local Act takes it away and we have no say. So it's kind of like one big, you know? So I want us to be mindful of that. We want to do something good, but we need to be careful of what other rules and regulations might be coming down the pike that might not allow us to do the good we're trying to do.
I agree with you.
Mayor,
Yeah.
Mayor, I appreciate your comments very much. They're very good. Is it possible to leave this language in the way it is for now, to get those comments back from the municipalities to see if that is truly the concern that we need to be wary of, or would you prefer us to
Choose a
strike it
higher
now?
percentage now.
Good questions. I'm really not sure. I love our cities. I know they're looking at these things. But I also know that Broward County Affordable Housing Committee will be looking at certain things like this too, to bring back for comments and recommendations and things. So I'm not sure what's best. I defer.
In general, when I look at this, I see this as another incentive, a bonus, things that we are allowing and providing another tool in the toolbox for municipalities to meet these needs. I see it that way. And then when I hear Mr. Stone talk about the real need and where we are, I don't have a problem with this language. I absolutely think that even the cities I represent may come back with some questions that you have.
Then
And
let's
I'd like to
revisit
hear
them.
those questions from the municipalities, see what their main concerns are. But again, this is truly a tool because we're adding bonus density. We're giving more options to these developers to provide us with this so needed densification and housing in our county. So Dr. Zeman.
I was going to wait to the end, but this is a better place to share that. It is quite possible to quantify the amount of land that's available that is subject to live local. There's another way to quantify those that are eligible for the Geller Amendment. And there's also a way to look at pro formas to figure out what other land is available in Broward County right now to do things without government subsidies or with government subsidies to kind of move forward with the housing crisis, as Mr. Stone has pointed out, is a very real one. I am of the belief that this is a problem that we created. I don't believe that we built a Broward County that accurately forecasted the needs in housing supply that we have today. And so if we continue to use the tools we've always had, we're not going to solve the problem that we have. I also believe that when the analysis is done, and I think it'll be done in a week, we'll have a projection for what amount of the current land that is available, live local, Geller Amendment, and otherwise, that we'll have in 5 years and in 10 years. So the initial run on that analysis is a dramatic decline in 5 years, which means that we've got to get past, kind of our old way of thinking about these things, and we have to make some dramatic changes now if we want to maintain Broward County as a place where people can afford to live. And that's, to me, the driving force of all of this work. It's why I wanted to be on this group, which is we have to decide, do we want Broward County to be Vail, Colorado, where the minimum house last year was $2.5 million, and people drive 37 miles to get to any kind of place where they can afford to work in a restaurant or work in a hotel? Or do we want Broward County to be a place where our kids and grandkids can afford to come and live? And that means a dramatic shift in the housing supply and a dramatic redistribution of what's built in Broward County. And it means we have to do things in this land use plan to not just strongly encourage it, but to figure out, kind of how do we partner with municipalities and developers and landowners to move out now. Because if we don't move out now, construction costs are going to continue to rise, land value is going to continue to rise, and that supply of available land to do anything different than what we have right now is going to continue to shrink. And we're going to end up like Vail, Colorado. And I don't think Broward County should become Vail, Colorado. I think it's within our control to do much better. But we cannot do what we've done in the past if we want to fix the problem of today for the future. And I don't think that that's worrying about the barrier island and worrying about, cute little percents here and there. It's a dramatic change from what we've done in the past so that we build a lot more housing supply. That's why Steve Geller did what he did in the Geller Amendment. But is it enough? Why do we have live local? We don't have live local because we solved the problem. We have live local and we have other and more extreme versions of live local if we can't figure this out. And I want to figure this out going forward. So I appreciate you raising the alarm. But to me, there's a bigger alarm 5 years from now, that when we do a really detailed analysis, parcel by parcel in Broward County, which is just a pretty easy math problem to do, we're going to then be able to project 5 and 10 years down the road. If the final results are similar to the initial results, it's going to be shocking at how little opportunity we're going to have in 2030 or 2035 to fix this problem. So if we don't fix it now, I'm afraid that, we're going to turn into Vail, Colorado.
Thank you. Mayor Levy.
So, Ralph, if I could just, I think Mayor Gomez made a point that if what we facilitate as a county is not competitive enough with Live Local, then applicants are going to go with Live Local, for example, and prefer those avenues that, exempt them from certain reviews and participation by and with the local zoning and what have you. Do you feel like there is some merit to what Mayor Gomez is saying with regards to, is this competitive enough with Live Local, and do we want to increase, even though we all strive to have the 60% and below, to increase that to create the, the business incentive for a property owner to go in this direction and to seek this type of opportunity versus saying, hey, let me just go with Live Local and then we don't have control? Because I think that was the crux of what you're saying, is this competitive enough?
No, I think should accommodate the full range, full meaning from 80% and below up to 120, 140, which is the workforce level. There's definitely a huge demand at the workforce level also. You know, when you have single-family homes, the median home price is 640. It's like 95% of your workforce is out there looking for affordable. Not to get too wordy, but Dr. Murray just shared with me last week a new statistic that he's come across for both Miami-Dade and Broward, but he calls it the brain drain. And he said right now we're losing about 15,000 people a year in the 20 to 35 age range.
Yep.
Miami-Dade is losing 25,000 a year. It's not because they don't want to be here, it's because they can't afford to live here. But that cohort can move. They're still mobile in their lives. So on top of the silver tsunami and everything else, it's just, one more problem to deal with. But I think from a business perspective, you have to be sensible about how this works, and I think a range is appropriate.
And so the range in the language now, I think it mentions low income levels, the moderate.
But even those are changing by HUD.
Right.
All those levels.
So if you were to make this a little more competitive, how would you change the language? Maybe that's to Barbara, or maybe it's just to the board, is do we want to make it more competitive and, increase the opportunity? Would you, maybe that's something you all can reflect on in between now
What comes to
and.
mind most immediately is size matters. So could you have different ratios based on the project size? Are you dealing with a 500-unit project? Are you dealing with, 10 units? So
Be creative.
something, could be massaged to try and make that kind of a better functioning, more appropriate tool. I know Barbara
Ms.
will be able to
Boyd.
come up with
She wants to get us out of here
solutions.
before 3
Well,
PM.
no,
so.
I want to add a couple of things to this. The bonus density, one, it's applicable regardless of how much affordable housing you
Yes.
have. You could have one unit, this policy is applicable. So this 15% is tying it to kind of more this unlimited, less limited density. So the incentive exists, but this is like an additional incentive on top of the incentive too. So I just want to clarify that
You stated my
there's.
point much better than I did a few minutes ago. Well done.
Right, so it's an incentive on an incentive. And I think when we're talking about a comparison to live local, that's a challenge too, because that requires 40% of the units to be at the moderate level. So that's a very high standard. So what we had already, I think, been creating in this plan is the incentive that Live Locals may be trying for, but our incentives, I think, are better. And I think that there's an opportunity for local governments, if it's the will of the steering committee, to kind of weigh in on what that sliding scale could be during the comment period, because I think that this is certainly, I feel like, our discussion about it is the right direction.
I do think we're on to something, and I do think, Mr. Stone, your point just now about maybe size matters a little bit, so you can maybe change some of that criteria as we get through it. So I would like to, if it's okay, to send it out the way it is, and then, Ralph, if you can comment on it back to what you're thinking with the size question, get with Ms. Blake Boyd, then we can maybe address Mayor Levy's concern and Mayor Gomez's concern, so we do have flexibility. I think that's what we're really looking at here, so appreciate it. This is good work, though, guys. Thank you.
Chair, before we get off this, can someone explain to me what Mayor Levy meant by competitive? Competitive to have more people in affordable housing that can get here? What version of competitive was he addressing?
I was thinking that the competitive for the developers to have options there so they can do more affordable housing. That's what I was getting towards, that they have options to continue to provide affordable housing. But when he comes back, he can answer that.
And then just one more little economics input. I don't believe 40% is extreme. And the reason I don't believe that is the best thing for affordable housing is increased supply. So the reason that it costs $2,500 in Fort Lauderdale to rent a studio apartment is we don't have enough studio apartments. But if we had more studio apartments, it could cost $1,500. And so these things wrap around each other, and a lot of things get better if we fix the housing supply. But we've got to fix the housing supply like rapidly. We can't continue to wish this problem away. We need to figure out how to encourage kind of a countywide effort to increase the housing supply if we're going to realize the benefits that come with it.
Excellent, thank you.
Mayor Levy's back. Do you want to ask him the question?
I'm sorry.
He doesn't.
I can't stand it when one of my local heroes says something that I don't understand. So I apologize for my ignorance. But when you talked about being competitive, you mean competitive to win workforce housing people that want to live here?
Yeah, competitive to attract the development of that affordable housing.
Right.
In other words, let's make something that people will choose to use within our framework as opposed to live local.
Or in addition?
And it's
Because
obviously in addition.
It's
but-
the law.
Yeah, we would rather them swim with our current versus the other current.
So the good news is I did understand what Mayor Levy understood.
What Mayor Gomez said that I was trying to figure out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Policy
Moving on.
2.16.4. We're awaiting the results of Senator Geller's subcommittee discussions, which are starting April 29th, before we propose any changes to this, since he's the architect of the policy.
Perfect.
Policy 2.16.5, residential by right on government-owned parcels. There's a couple things proposed to this. This allows for the sale of the land to happen, because before, the public retained ownership of that, so it allows for the sale of the land. It expands it to include faith-based institutions. It also, currently, the maximum density is set at 50 dwelling units per acre. It changes that determination to be made by the local government. And part of this is the strategy of it being along the transportation network, not the regional transportation network, but this includes local roads also, access to transportation and the transportation network. Somebody
Yeah,
wants to.
please. I
So,
think this is important.
I heard the term in God's backyard, as opposed to not in my backyard or yes in my backyard. I think I was watching a hearing of the state legislature, and someone used that, and I thought it was was a fun way to kind of look at it. So my question is just maybe to Andy, knowing that the state legislature might in a few weeks, provide or preempt the cities and provide an opportunity for affordable housing to be built on what we'll call faith-based property owned by a faith-based institution. Does this end up becoming something that we might remove later in time, or just needs to be consistent with what that law is if it passes, and that'll pass or not pass before we finalize this? So.
I think it will fill in, as Barbara indicated before, it may fill in the gap below the 40%. It will actually, it could work with it and it could supplement it.
I see. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
because you always, as great as Live Local hopefully will be for in encouraging affordable housing, that 40% sometimes can get in the way of the economic calculations of a developer.
Yeah, I just didn't want it to conflict. I didn't want our BrowardNext to
And
be
you
in
know
conflict with state law.
But it's an excellent point. I think what we have to be doing is watching the legislature throughout this, and it may affect some changes. So everything is subject to that and across the board. It's a good point.
Right, July 1st is a
Yeah,
important,
July 1.
important day,
Yeah,
right?
Will be our Independence Day, and then we'll figure out everything we can do here.
Right. Do you have a comment?
I would have asked. No, I'm kidding. I do. I'm just not sure how to ask the comment. I could do it offline, actually. We can do it another time. I'm fine with the wording as it is.
Thank you. What I'm wondering is, in the interest of time, the policies that are coming up, smart growth, transportation, complete streets, if we should skip ahead to climate resiliency, since we have a quorum today for that discussion, because I do think that there could be more discussion on that piece than the other pieces. We could go back to those other pieces if need be.
It's a great idea.
Okay, thank you. So if you're looking at your summary, it would be page 12, Andy just told me, allegedly, page 12. Okay, and if you are looking in the full document, it starts on page 27. And really, pages 28 and 29 in the full document, so page 12 in the summary. So this section, and this is part of the reason why Dr. Harado is here today. We had some discussion about the proposed maps and land use plan amendments being subject to these additional policies. Listed before you, 2.21, this is the area. This was enacted in 2012 initially, this section. This was the adoption of, this is just a historical perspective, the priority planning area map, the indicator in the county plan of land use plan amendments that fall in priority planning areas, and the additional criteria that those amendments would be subject to. What's proposed in the additional policies before you today is the expansion of this section to include the evaluation of plan amendments within two, I'll call them new map areas. There's two maps tied to these, a social resilience map and then the future conditions water storage map. Don, if you could just forward to the clip of the maps, which are also included in your material. To the left, you have the social resilience area map, and to the right, you have the future conditions water storage map. So these policies, as they're drafted right now, if land use plan amendments were filed for these areas, they would be subject to these additional criteria and analysis. The social resilience map is really tied to heat and flood. And then the water storage map is tied to a net community benefit for redevelopment opportunities. So all of the policies that you see before you are tied to those pieces. And there's always a what if. We talked about this a little bit last month. Yes. What if you are unable to meet these policies? What is your next step? Is it going to prohibit the passage of a land use plan amendment? And where we came to in that discussion, and it's laid out in these policies, is there is a way to get past that policy if you're unable to meet it by here, whether that be contributions to a fund to start funding these improvements, throughout the county. So there's always opportunities to get past this policy, which is similar to how the Affordable Housing Policy 2.16.2 has been structured and functioning for about almost close to 20 years. There is a pass go. If you are unable to meet the policy, there is a way to pass the policy. So that is my generic overview of it, and I think I'd like to give it back to you for discussion, and if there's any specific questions for Dr. Harado or Planning Council staff and attorney.
Mayor Levy.
Well, thank you for working on this, and I do appreciate the opportunity for an applicant to contribute to a fund that will further the community's opportunity to be more adaptive to climate resiliency, considering and I think acknowledging that sometimes not all of our endeavors could be accommodated on one particular development site. And there might be a good result in the redevelopment of a particular site that might lend itself better to the contribution for the county to invest elsewhere, if I'm understanding what the proposal is. So just a question, Barbara, on 2.21.3 subsection A, where it says that in general that the county will evaluate the plan amendment within this area and will discourage those amendments which would contribute to the additional flood or heat risk within the basin and for adjacent properties under the current and future conditions. In review of such amendments, the county shall review for example, stormwater storage improvements that provide a net benefit to the community. But if we're talking about a land use plan amendment that comes forward because of, would it come forward because of one particular application? And if it did, then are we asking an applicant to go beyond their property lines to provide a net benefit to the community? Isn't the legal obligation strictly, to retain your own stormwater on your own property? If you could just explain that to me.
Andy just leaned over and said we should clarify that first.
You make a very good point there. That language, we want to make sure, because you're not allowed to impose
That's an excellent point.
it's a benefit that's disproportionate, and we'll handle that.
Okay. I mean, the same thing goes for, I wasn't so much worried about green infrastructure projects, but if you could just look at within that scope to all three, Andy, that would be good.
No, we'll look at that.
Okay.
Yes. Dr. Harada, do you want to add anything to the net community benefit or on-site discussion?
Good morning, welcome.
Good morning, thank you. I appreciate that if there's some problem with the language, that could be.
You want them to mitigate their impacts, it's not other communities' impact on them.
Andy, hit your mic.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. You want them to mitigate their impacts, and I think what there's language in the Burt Harris Act said you're not allowed to impose the issues on another community with development as it comes in. So I think
I understand the constraints of the Burt Harris, but if I may
Sure.
just expand just a tiny bit upon the
Sure, please do.
introduction of the map and express the challenge and the intent, and then we can work to potentially identify improved language. But I do want to share that the water basin storage map that is presented captures the results of the 2 years that we spent working on a resilience plan that incorporates the water storage needs in order to achieve a shared level of risk reduction across our community. So in addition to meeting the 20% rainfall intensification requirements that would come with water management needs, there's other storage that we will need. And so the intent is, I just want to share the intent.
Sure.
That water storage will either need to be met on site, because through land development you have opportunities that won't exist in existing land development. So can we incorporate this shared water management need and consideration as part of our land use, some of which could be a private applicant, sometimes it's the city, and or look at mechanisms for meeting those water management needs at adjacent properties or priority areas that the municipalities would have established, or shared water management systems in order, and I just want to introduce the language, in order to achieve that net community benefit. Because if we don't work to do that through our land use processes, we will be losing opportunities, because there are simply other aspects of the landscape that are not going to lend to redevelopment in the timeframes that we need. So it is about trying to take advantage of these opportunities to achieve the collective need, allowing for the flexibility, and how we get there is the intent.
And it's an excellent point, and in responding, I should have reflected that. What we'll do is we'll get with the county attorney's office, because this is important, and what you say is very important. We will craft language that we feel will navigate, because Mayor Levy makes a good point, and obviously it's a very profound point that is made here. So we'll have to work our way through that, and we will. We'll come up with language that I think works for everyone.
Mayor Gomez.
Forgive me if this has probably been covered already, if I've missed this, or I'm not in the right place. But when it comes to this, does it also take into consideration that even if we're doing everything on the site that we're redeveloping, that the redeveloping parcel does not put burden on the following parcel? It may be we're not touching the parcel, but we've done so much here, but we're at a higher elevation, now water's rolling down or things are happening, and the older parcels, because I'm thinking more towards the west part of this, it's going to affect. So do we have language in here that is mindful of that, that also puts the onus back on the developing parcel, that if there should be complaints within a year or two, because sometimes you don't know right away until that next 100-year flood that comes in 5 years, causes the damage to that lower level parcel?
Dr. Arado.
Thank you for the question. So what the language provides for is that the site would need to meet all of the future conditions or requirements that account for the change in the land use, the impervious to, impervious to impervious. It accounts for the sea level rise, the groundwater table rise, the rainfall intensification. So they have to manage all of that. In addition, we would be assigning this additional water volume that's already been calculated for the basin. So they have to meet the design condition, they have to meet some portion of that volumetric water storage. At minimum, they would have to meet that which pertains to their footprint, but they could meet more. So it could be that the city is saying, for example, so that would ensure that it's not contributing to the adjacent, but the city or the parties involved could also say, but we also know there's this larger water management need, and in addition to ensuring that we don't compound, we could absorb potentially more in order to make the project more attractive. But it should address exactly as you described, not only by meeting all those conditions, but then some.
So along with that, then it also, again, pardon me if it's already here and I've missed it, it's not necessarily contiguous to the parcel in which it is for that additional stuff, right? So if I have a property here and the property here is getting affected, I know that the smaller property now has the basin and a quarter into wherever to take control for the property on the outside. But the space to be able to accommodate greater water basin and retention might be a little bit more over here, like a mile away. That is still feasible within this plan in order for this circle development, to get.
That's
what it needs.
absolutely correct. So that would allow for the acknowledgement that Mayor Levy was making, is that you might be interested in developing a certain site. You may not be able to meet all of the water management challenges on site, but perhaps it's part of a larger strategy to divert those needs to a space, and so long as you can demonstrate that that is, the infrastructure is being put in place to achieve that, then that would be allowed. I do want to, it would be envisioned as being supported by this. I do also want to just clarify that sometimes sites are redeveloped and claims can be made that the flooding that occurs subsequently as a result of the redevelopment, but sometimes you have adjacent older properties that never had adequate stormwater management. They've been meeting water management needs because there was this lower lying even further, and so when this one's brought up, now these ones are having challenges, but it's not because this one really contributed, it's that they're no longer acting as the sink. And so I just want to clarify that there could still be situations where those things could occur.
Then what is, if we know that there's that potential occurrence, what happens? Because if not for the new change of that lower level to higher level, this particular established community would already be okay. So there has to be some protections.
Andy, do you want to
that.
weigh in? This is more of a legal question.
Sorry.
Andy, your
Mike.
microphone.
Barbara told me that, and I didn't press it. She's laughing at me here. No, I think this discussion shows how serious and how the crafting of this is going to need some time. I think the net benefit to the community is important language. What we need to do is make sure that we can just walk through the channel, legal channel that we need to do. And I think we can, using the concept that what Jennifer has just put on the record. And I think we will craft it, and it may look something similar to net benefit, or may have that word with some explanation. I'm going to get with the county attorney's office. And we'll do that. But she makes a very persuasive case, and I think within the context, even though there are a lot of restrictions under Burt Harris and things of that sort, the Burt Harris Act does recognize that there are certain environmental conditions which everyone has been aware of for a number of years, that when you develop, you got to develop within that framework, and there are going to be requirements on you. So we'll work through that.
Thank you. I'm going to recognize Councilmember Horland,
Thank
and
you,
then Dr.
Mr. Chair.
Zeman.
Very quickly, because some of the points I was going to make, Mayor Gomez made, but Andy, you just nailed it. I mean, this is, I think, one of the most critical parts of this document, and coming on the heels of Dr. Harada releasing this week the resiliency study. This is a place where I would have put in policy 2.21.3, I would have added strongly there, shall strongly discourage those amendments. And to Mayor Levy's point, and I'm all for a developer being able to put money into a fund to mitigate some of those potential issues, but it's a little bit different when you're dealing with stormwater and you're dealing with, the City of Plantation has a tree beautification fund, and developers are able to put money into that if they have to remove or have to relocate trees. I see this as a little bit more critical, so I wouldn't want anybody to, unless they're going to be putting stormwater improvements in somewhere, to be able to buy their way out of that if it causes problems for adjacent properties. So that's my biggest concern. We're dealing that with the City of Plantation now with a property that was approved prior to my being elected, and we're seeing flooding that nobody anticipated. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilwoman
May
Horland. Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Dr. Arado.
Just say chair.
Chair. And I want to articulate that in these areas where you may find compromised drainage because of these inadequate systems, this type of approach would also be acknowledging that while this adjacent property could have been serving as the sink, that sink could be replicated through like swale improvement projects in the adjacent community that would regenerate the storage that was conveniently being provided by the adjacent property. So it may not have been their obligation to provide that, but yet the community developed relying upon that. So you could use this mechanism to recapture the storage needed through the adjacent neighborhood improvements. And this is the type of strategy and negotiation that policy is intended to support.
And I think that's a great point, Dr. Arado, because this is not a parcel by parcel issue. It's a community issue, it's a regional issue, it's a city issue. And I think the more we can, start having the conversation of how we solve this problem, I think it's better for us. This, again, really helps us push this along. And looking at it from legal perspective, Andy, I appreciate that with the language you'll bring back, but this is a great discussion, and it's really good points everyone's made up. Dr. Zeman didn't want to leave you out of making really good
Look,
points, so.
when your name's Zeman, you're used to going last, Chair. No big deal. Just a couple things. Dr. Arado, as the largest landowner in Broward County, I'd like you to come brief our board. Thank you for the plan that's just been published. We have roughly $1.5 billion of construction we're going to do over the next 5 years. We would like to make sure that we do that in the most responsible way, not because Broward County tells us to do it, but because we're the Broward County School Board and we like to make good decisions for the long term of the county. Second is, so would you come and brief our board?
It would be a privilege.
Oh,
Thank
well,
you.
wait till you get through the experience and let me know after. We don't have 3 rings, but we have 2 every once in a while, and sometimes we dip over to 3 in our 12-hour meetings.
Oh, my goodness.
But we would benefit tremendously from a really, really close association. Again, Broward County Schools wants to do everything that's good for the next 50 years of buildings that we're building in Broward County and comply with things just because we want to be contributors to continue to contribute to the well-being of the county. Second, though, is I hope that we can think more about mitigations that are very, very specific to developments. There's tremendous opportunities to go to adjacent properties and buy improvements in those adjacent properties so that you fix the sink problem. But we have to be very careful because, to Mayor Gomez's point, to whom are we going to give the economic rents? That's what this question is really about. Someone that owns a sink is doing everybody a favor in this hypothetical example. Do they get the rent because they've been doing this forever, or do they get to develop and eliminate the sink and then the bill is just handed over to adjacent properties? We have to figure that out, and I think it's a great issue to figure out here before the state tells us what they think the answer is. But that's like a huge economics. This is a $1 trillion question, which is to whom do you pass the bill? I think historically, we've always passed it to whoever wants to do the next development. And that may not be the solution that gets us to the greatest level of resiliency, but I would be in favor of whatever makes the greatest progress toward being resilient with the water table.
Thank you for the comment. We had provided, our team, and Dr. Mount is here, he had made a presentation to, let's call it your Green Committee, on the full of the plan. We intentionally included the school district properties as well within this plan. There isn't precise, we've identified a total cost of all the infrastructure that's identified supporting the level of resilience here at $28 billion. About 2/3 of that is anticipated to fall be captured through redevelopment and the new design requirements that will be needed to ensure that the necessary infrastructure is being installed to support this outcome. And there is a delta between what's been historically required and what is going to be needed. And it is essential, this is the first step, is the land use planning process. Then we have to bring this to the rest of development that isn't only just when you have a change in land use, but how are we redeveloping the rest of our landscape so that it's happening incrementally, collectively, and in an organized manner in terms of this sharing of costs. Some of this will be public investment, about $9 billion it's estimated, and the other 18 through what happens through site-specific adaptation and redevelopment processes. I appreciated the comment that you made earlier about the importance of school properties in terms of park deserts, and I wanted to share that I think it's also a tremendous opportunity to look at school properties as part of that water management solution. Sure. Because so much of the flooding is happening around schools. You can't do car lines because, so there are projects such as Project Oasis in Paris, which I would encourage perhaps you could look at, is an extraordinary example of the partnership with schools and community for those shared spaces that meet tremendous green infrastructure, water management, and educational needs. So I look forward to briefing the school district and having more of these conversations.
There's a similar project in Nice to that also, in Nice, France, following the same model. It's very interesting.
I was in Paris for 10 days recently with these lovely children, and one of the days was visiting some of the sites, so I'm a big fan of Oasis. I just would extend your thinking a little bit. You know, there's this thing called government land. It's a massive amount of Broward County. It is there to serve the needs of the people. And so if you go to a place that is a city, county, state park, federal courthouse, all of those organizations should be part of the solution. If you just look at public land as belonging to the people instead of the agency to which it's currently listed on the deed, there's tremendous opportunities to solve problems. And we need to think about all of that land in Broward County. We have 1,323 square miles, but a lot of it is dedicated public land. And I just wish we would think about it as public land. And I find it very fun to go talk to federal, state, local, city leaders and try and open up this dialogue about how do we use public land to meet the social needs that we have going forward. And I haven't met a municipal leader or federal leader or state leader who doesn't want to do that. We just have to find ways to kind of make it better for everybody.
Excellent. Andy, do you want to comment?
And just a final point reviewing this, in looking at that, I was doing an in-depth study of this really right now. And the thing I wanted to point out, and I persuaded by something that Jennifer said, and looking at this, I want to make clear, Mayor, this language here is related to when reviewing impact amendments to the comprehensive plan. I think we need to keep that in context because there are different levels. There's the level of permitting, and then there's a level of a comprehensive plan amendment, which is somewhat different. So we're going to work within that context and come back with something for you.
Thank you. Mayor Levy?
Yeah, so I appreciate everybody's comments. And City of Hollywood, for example, when we were looking at our stormwater master plan, we pointed to our parks and public sites and said, hey, how could these properties assist in the stormwater management in a particular basin? And understanding that we might, that might be a priority, you know, in configuring recreational space to accommodate as a leading factor, of course, stormwater management and retention or what have you. You know, where my concern is that we have, Dr. Gerardo, if I could just get your attention. My concern is that, okay, we have a county that's built out. Some of that built out area is in what we're going to be calling, and already is, designated as, you know, adaptive action areas or priority planning areas. And it's still to our collective benefit to have older property built 70 years ago in that area as it exists today to be modernized with better stormwater management, maybe even new uses that, you know, contribute to today's lifestyles and today's wants and needs. And I'm afraid, maybe you can alleviate my fear, but I'm just concerned, I want us to be mindful of that we're still still have a regulatory framework that encourages the updating and the adaptability of these properties, and doesn't basically result in property owners saying, if I have to do all this, I have to meet the future, you know, water conditions and A, B, C, and D, and their engineer says, Joey, it's impossible. The net result for us as a community is the old building that was built 70 years ago stays exactly the way it is, because no one can say change what you have already. It's, you know, it's there. So I'm just worried that we're going to cause stagnation by, you know, choking the redevelopment opportunity. So I love the idea that's in here that allows for the off-site, you know, off-site opportunity to contribute if the property site itself, for example, can't do it all on its own within its footprint. So I just wanted to know that you acknowledge that predicament and just that you're mindful as you craft a lot of the policy for the county, that we want to achieve success through encouraging adaptive reconstruction, not necessarily force things to stay the way they are. The guy with the sink will never touch it because we're going to have a list of A through Z. So he's just going to leave the sink the way it is, and it might not be the greatest thing for the city where the sink is located, and or the county because it hasn't, you know, gone forward. So that's where I'm coming from.
No, your point's a very good one, Mayor. I appreciate that. Dr. Otto is really not a response right now necessary because you're working on that exactly, and I think, Mayor Levy, just want to make sure everyone is cognizant that we don't want to do harm here when we're trying to do so good, so we appreciate that. I will say one other thing while I have the mic here is, Dr. Otto, your staff and your team have been very, very open. You've come out to so many meetings just in Northern County, whether it's Deerfield or Pompano. I mean, you've been to our little meetings 3 times already up in Pompano Beach, so I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I'm anxious to read that full report that just came out, and I know you're going to come talk to us at a breakfast meeting next week, so. So, no, but we really appreciate your efforts and what you're doing, so thank you.
Yeah, appreciate the support.
Okay. Ms. Boyd.
Thank you. So what I'm thinking is, if we go backwards, it's what you covered last month. So I'd like to move forward, if that's okay, unless someone had a specific question about the kind of in-between policies.
No, I think
Okay.
we really wanted to bring a few things back that we have brought back
Right, and I
today,
think
so
this
whatever
was,
else
this
you
was
want us
one of
to
them.
cover.
So what I would just go to the next, I think it's the next slide, environmentally sensitive lands. This is an update to the text to, this is the issue where we talked about was the disconnect between having the ESL map and the county plan and the permitting and licensing piece. So we've proposed language that can address that. And the follow-up piece to that would be, if this update to the policy is addressed, that a Broward County Land Use Plan Natural Resource Map Series amendment is no longer required for that, treating it more like the wetlands map, that everything's covered through permitting and licensing. Those pieces would fall into place at the conclusion of the adoption of this piece of policy. So that's what we've done with that.
Dr. Zima, did you have a question? You raised your hand. Okay.
Awesome, okay, great.
Barbara's awesome. Put that
Okay,
on the
great.
record.
Thank goodness. Okay, good, thank you. So I think with that, I think that really concludes the things that we were bringing back for this
Yes.
month from this policy section. And then it's just going to take me a couple more minutes to get through just for the definitions slide.
Does anybody have any questions regarding the policies we covered? Because we wanted to bring back and get into more detail those specific issues. Are we satisfied with where we are?
Maybe one question to Dr. Gerardo. As it relates to heat, there's reference to heat, and we all understand, the sensitivity to, mitigating heat. But when the policy, discourages amendments that would contribute to additional heat risk within the basin, do you take that to mean that any additional square foot of rooftop is additional heat risk, and you want to discourage any additional square foot of rooftop because it's heat, or if it's a cool roof, you're good?
Cool roofs would be great, but we wouldn't know that at this part of the review process. So it isn't about discouraging the square footage of redevelopment, but it is about ensuring that green infrastructure is adequately incorporated into the projects, once again allowing for other investments within the, within the priority area to compensate where there are limited opportunities. But I would just
Tree canopy, et cetera.
exactly, and bioswales and other types of green infrastructure that can soften the concrete, the footprint of heat. And I'll just share that when we mapped the adaptation action area for social resilience with heat-related illness reports and calls and responses, they directly overlay. I mean, there is a horrible public health exposure that's associated with the zip codes that we've identified that share heat, flood, and social exposures. And so it's about being cognizant of that and making sure that we're utilizing our redevelopment to account for something that's already a problem.
Excellent. All right. Thank you.
Oh, no.
Okay, definitions.
Well, no, I had,
You have, I'm sorry, Mayor.
no, that's okay.
Go right ahead.
No. Again, not sure if I'm on point, but when you're saying the heat, we're talking about the drives, not just the rooftop, the roadways in the buckling? Or is that part of this?
It's about the thermal gradient that feels like temperature in our communities. And it's about 14 degrees higher in areas that are high concrete, low green space as compared to areas that have green space.
It's
So,
huge.
along with that, though,
Standing in a hot parking lot.
it is, and so some of the stuff, and I know on a different board, we've talked about it, but the heat of the roadways, when pavement is being done and concrete infrastructure or asphalt is being done, are any of these, am I stepping in it?
No.
Okay, I'm just making sure. Because,
general
I
discussion.
tend to do that.
When has that stopped you before?
Exactly, very true. But the part of the problem that I know that we have if we're talking about making everything better, this is one of those things. Our roads buckle after we have a fresh coat of asphalt or a fresh coat of concrete going on things because of what it's being made of, because of price, because of what is considered environmentally green or not. And how do we achieve making sure that we are not using good resources after bad, constantly trying to fix roadways? I know of a roadway that was done less than a year ago, but it's already like a roller coaster because it goes like this. Or the pitch out of potholes. So what do we do? Is any of this incorporated? Am I in the wrong place?
That may not be heat.
Yeah, so one, I can't speak to the material use at this point. I mean, there's lots of technology advancement, and we need to be part of, and that's part of, building resilience in our communities as industry and really being part of the solutions where we look at different materials that are cool materials. This doesn't speak to that precisely. Yes, you could use that as part of the solution. But in terms of, but what I will say is that when you invest in green infrastructure, that cooling spills over onto the, it's not just cool where you're standing, but that footprint can expand, depending on the size of your properties, more than 1,000 feet away. So all of those things collectively, if we're doing it well, are cooling the full environment, which are making it better for the road areas. And so you would have less of those issues longer term, even though it's still getting hotter. But yeah, we probably do need to be looking at different materials that are more sustainable, resilient under all types of evaluations. But I can't speak to that solution today.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Blake?
Thank you. So just quickly in definitions, what you see in blue before you, you reviewed last month. The orange are updates regarding special residential facilities and clarification of that. We're streamlining special residential facilities to be represented in the, not only in the permitted uses, but in the definitions, and that will just assist with the implementation of that.
Great.
Next slide is permitted uses, I think.
If I might, just on a definition?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. Thank you. I just want to point out for your consideration, Barbara and Andy, we have a defined term barrier island, and then we have a defined term coastal barrier island as defined by Florida statutes. I would just submit to you to consider that it might be a little confusing to have coastal barrier island and barrier island, which mean different things under Florida law and how they're defined here. And so I just want to offer for you to consider to change the name of barrier island to the word, capitalize the word beach, so that it's not confused with coastal barrier island when we use that as a term of art. Because if we're saying all lands east of the intercoastal waterway, which features lie above the line of mean high water and front, basically areas east of the intercoastal waterway, I think we commonly refer to it as, in Broward County, as beach, Fort Lauderdale Beach, Hollywood Beach, Dana Beach, Pompano Beach. And again, the term of art, coastal barrier island, is a term of art. So just, it might be confusing to have both used, seemingly interchangeably, but they're different. So if you use the word beach, it might be more clear.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks, Andy. Okay.
Okay, next slide is the permitted uses. Bye, guys. And just quickly, the biggest change since the last meeting and all of these permitted uses that I would just point out is this update to special residential facilities that,
Ms. Boyd, we still have a quorum?
yes, we still have quorum. We have 4 in person,
Just make
and
sure if we
Mayor
need to take a
Brunson is
vote, I wasn't
online.
going to let Dr. Ziegler leave.
Right, that's what he came and asked
Okay.
us, right. So we do have 5 present.
you.
One more leaves, we will not have a quorum. But we're doing our best to do this.
You're doing a great job.
Okay, so permitted uses, so as I was saying, special residential facilities, this is a clarification to bring it consistent with the, with state statute, and that falls back into the
Dr. Zeman.
definitions section.
Excuse me.
Your phone.
It's your phone, sir.
I clicked on it just to make sure it was yours. I saw pictures
Yeah.
of kids.
I know you're trying hard.
Yeah, thank you.
That's like my approach coming in, it doesn't happen.
See, it's not only Lily and Jane that sometimes forget their phone. That happens to Dad too sometimes.
Ms. Blakemore.
Okay, so special residential facilities throughout this permitted uses section reflected to the same in the definitions. The biggest change really is the recreation open space piece, and this was the feedback we got from the committee last month about permitting affordable housing opportunities in the recreation and open space land use designation. So we have crafted, staff has crafted language to reflect that request in the residential category with a limitation. And I think that's something that I also anticipate, interested party and
Yes.
municipal comment on during, when we get to the point that we're distributing this for, I mean, it's always available for comment, but when we have the version that we're sending out, I do anticipate feedback on that also. Those are the highlights of the permitted uses section. And then recommended practices, as we talked about, those are, policies that are set out that the county wants to encourage, but it's not part of our review as land use plan amendments, but provides a foundation for local governments who may want to do more.
Okay.
Then the support documents, are just referenced in here. And just to quickly go through what is in there, a clip of the Broward County Land Use Plan map, the estimation of permitted dwelling units by the county plan. Also, the indicator at the end, that 36,000, I wish Dr. Zeman hadn't left yet, 36,000 units have been added to the county plan since the adoption in 2017. So we have been actively adding not just incentive-based policy, but the county policy units. And then the table of the permitted residential allowances, which is referenced earlier in the framework. And then we talked about, these are the written comments that we received in total through April 17th, will also be continued to be updated, also available in our website, plus the resources and education piece of this. So for the next meeting, what staff is anticipating is the highlighted regional issues section coming up based on your feedback from all of these sections. At the next meeting, a presentation of the implementation procedures, which we don't anticipate a huge change to because we just went through the amendment that was adopted mid-year last year, but perhaps some tweaks to that. And then we would present any of the policies that we discussed today and some additional policies from the framework that have not yet been drafted for your consideration and presented for your consideration. So those would be the highlights of that. I know everyone responded to the poll except for one member that is here. I don't have his input for the next date. So Mayor Levy, I'm going to put a little bit
tell
of
me.
pressure on you.
No, tell me now.
Okay, May 21st,
Versus,
May 15th. And May 15th is going to be a tough turnaround for.
so May 21st,
May
we have
21st is the day.
we have city commission meetings.
Okay, so the morning is no good for you. Okay,
Um,
that's okay.
What time in the morning did you say?
Well, we would do a 9 o'clock start, and also there would be an opportunity for you to participate online that day.
If that's the day that works for everyone, my meeting doesn't start until 1.
Okay.
So
Okay,
I'll
that
commit to
is,
getting it done by 11.
either way, the show must go on. So
Okay.
if that's the day that works for everyone, that's fine. Yeah.
okay, so we'll set that date for May 21st. I actually just wanted to get him and see if he
Yeah,
could do
let's
that.
do it. I'll put it in.
Okay, May
9 a.m.
21st will be your next committee meeting with the materials that we just discussed.
Great.
So we will not go in as full of detail. We will be sticking to the discussion points today and the new material for the
Exactly
next
as we
meeting.
discussed. Thank you.
Okay, great. With that, we're still at the same place on the roadmap. We're still at number 5. We're holding strong at
Holding
number 5.
strong at 5.
Holding strong at 5.
Very important, though. Very
yes.
important stuff.
Very important. So with that, I would just lend it back to you if there's any additional comments or ideas that we didn't cover today for the meeting on May 21st.
No, I will say this again for the record. I think you did a great job of addressing the steering committee's concerns. Last month, you went back, the format change was great. You and your staff, again, did a phenomenal job getting ready for this. There's some more clarification needed going next month, but we're still on the right schedule. So again, I just appreciate all the efforts of you and the team of answering to us. And I want to say, for the record, too, this is a great steering committee. There's a lot of really good comments here and very thoughtful. I appreciate everybody doing their homework on this, so thank you, guys. Anything else?
Thank you.
Anything else today? All right, with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome job.
Do we have an
Oh, my goodness.
I know,
I stuck the landing at 11:30.